Every generation invents a new culture, a new normality, a new standard by which all else is judged. Here in Newcastle it was just the same. 1066 brought the Norman invasion, and with it a dread of France that exists to this day. There have been fortifications in Newcastle since Roman times. Nothing remains of the so-called Newcastle built by William the Conqueror's son, Robert Curthose, in 1080. Henry II decreed that unlicensed castles be destroyed. However, he soon realised the need for a defence against the Scots. This present building, much modified, dates from 1172. In 1400, Newcastle became an independent county, but the castle remained in Northumberland. Felons from Newcastle could seek refuge in the castle as authorities had no power within. Queen Elizabeth's 1589 charter put an end to that loophole. In 1809, the dwellings, shops and derelict bailey were demolished to make way for the present Moot Hall. Moot is an Old English word for meeting. This new building, designed by William Stokoe, reflects the vogue for a fanciful version of ancient Greek style. The Moot Hall served as the Crown Courthouse, but is now relegated to an overflow since the opening of the new quayside law courts. The coming of the railways brought the high-level bridge in 1848. Victorian big business ruled all. The castle was vandalised to make way for the railway. The main line slices through the middle of the castle, and it seems that nothing, not even history, could oppose the mighty railway companies. Did the people of the day object? If they did, little of their cries lives on. The clarions of Victorian Britain were assuredly on the side of the shareholders. The railways were the superhighways of the day. Nothing could stand in their way. Past centuries preserved only what was precious. The sumptuous, the grand, castles, cathedrals, palaces. Today we preserve not only for the symbolic, but also for sentiment, decorativeness, for continuity. Recording and saving our past has become a widespread concern. We have become collectors of relics. Some out of concern for profit rather than a genuine desire to preserve. We should preserve only the best. We can't keep everything. History is a continuing process. Choices made today are choices for the future. What will people think about what we choose to preserve? Designers of today have an obligation to the future. We have to demonstrate the best that today can do. We have to resist the temptation to produce pastiche or preserve indifferent buildings. Otherwise, the future will look back and say we didn't use our skill and imagination. We should save older buildings that still have value. Whether it's a human value because people love it or remember it, or where it has a value as a resource. It may be more economical to keep a building than to tear it down and build anew. Some older insensitive solutions to combining old and new have made planners afraid of modern solutions. We have lost nerve. It is so much easier to build new buildings behind old facades, using the old as a death mask. You don't get a good new building and you've lost the old one. If all you keep is the facade, it becomes just that, a theatrical joke. Where space becomes available following industrial relocation or sweeping aside redundant structures, planners and architects have scope for showing the best of 21st century modes and materials. Here at Gallowgate, once the site of Newcastle breweries, only this curved 1960s block remains. Serving as the head office for many years, it made supreme sense to refurbish this iconic steel and glass building for use as a hotel and leisure venue. The new space afforded by the closure of the brewery became an opportunity for new architecture to flourish. Will these structures survive into the sentiment of the future? Do they represent value for today's users? This high-density accommodation serves the students of today better than the unregulated, crumbling Fenham and Benwell flats. Some might regret the passing of multiple occupancy student housing, but it would be an unadventurous student who does not visit their like-minded neighbours. There is no attempt at imitation here. The buildings group together to show diversity of function and design. They will be a familiar part of the city landscape for years to come. There can be few people on Tyneside who haven't heard of Thomas Daniel Smith, Labour leader of Newcastle City Council from 1960 until 1965. He attempted to improve living conditions in the city. His plan was to sweep away the dense slum dwellings so people could live in airy, attractive accommodation. He has wrongly been associated with the uncaring destruction of worthy city centre buildings to be replaced by brutalist concrete. Much of this came after his tenure, being the work of Chief Planning Officer Wilfred Burns. Smith's notoriety comes from being jailed for bribery surrounding local government, but none of the charges related to Tyneside. In 1972, architect John Poulson was declared bankrupt in Leeds. Proceedings uncovered proof of Smith's PR firm's involvement in bribery to gain Poulson more contracts. Smith pleaded guilty in his 1974 trial, serving 3 of his 6-year sentence. Poulson's connections went right the way up to the then Tory Home Secretary Reginald Maudling. Maudling was forced out of office but avoided prison by a convenient legal loophole. In 1824, during George IV's reign, architect John Dobson's plan to redevelop the crumbling Anderson estate in the centre of town failed due to lack of finance. In 1831, Richard Granger, another Georgian architect, bought the land. He encountered rough timber buildings, dilapidated mansions, stinking sewers running down to the river, unsanitary meat and vegetable markets, as well as a hodgepodge of diverse tracts. He had a vision to erect fine buildings, wide vistas with coherent cross-town thoroughfares. He engaged Dobson for some of his projects and obtained civic clearance for the plans from a most compliant town clerk and solicitor, John Clayton. Such an alliance would almost certainly lead to prison today, but in 1834 it was just good business. The result is these impressive ranges of Georgian buildings with their faux Ionian and Corinthian columns, Adamesque windows, and Greek-influenced pediments and peristyles. No one complained at the time about this mixing of styles in what is essentially a film set approach to civic design. Certainly no one complains today. These handsome, sturdy buildings continue to be not only admired but also desirable business premises. Dobson and Gray's plans provided new imposing streets leading to a central meeting square, originally named Seven Dials. Later, in 1838, John and Benjamin Green erected this Doric column to support Edward Hodges Bailey's statue of Charles Earl Grey, who gives his name to this spot today.
Have you ever seen this place before? I'll be alright.
Once the main London to Edinburgh High Road, Northumberland Street is now pedestrian only. This recent build from 2014 replaces the much modified 1930s Montague Burton block. Its exterior maintains the feel of the surroundings without slavishly copying. Both style and size strive for a blend. In 1915, the newly rebuilt Fenwick department store led the way to this area being the retail hub that it is today. Always keen to make an impression with its buildings, Boots the Cash Chemist erected this imposing shop in the 1920s. The famous four here are Thomas Bewick, 18th century bird illustrator, Hotspur, killed in 1403 trying to usurp Richard II, John Marley kept the Scots at bay in 1644, and Roger Thornton, wealthy merchant and 14th century mayor. The period from 1920 to 35 saw many new inserts. There was a vogue for plain, functional buildings, refusing ornament. Eldon Square Shopping Centre, Wilfrid Burns' brainstorm, was erected during the early 1970s by carving out chunks of the city, then building upwards and outwards. The Northumberland Street entrance has been given a recent facelift. Marks and Spencer arrived here in 1932, although this building dates from the mid-1960s. The latest gimmick is to soften the brutalism with these vertical gardens. Replacing the previous Tatler Cinema in 1980, this Barclays Bank building offers ground floor retail below the high security above. There is no attempt to fit in here. Haymarket Metro surface building is a 2009 jelly mould dumped from the sky. Its creators' fanciful ideas extended to retail and office accommodation, paying for the development as well as subsidising the rapid transit system. This hasn't turned out too well. Across the street, the university has commissioned a number of modern, functional and well-constructed buildings. Whilst some might lament the loss of older taverns, the users here will be well served into the future. All that remains of the 13th century Blackfriars Priory is the cloister buildings. Henry VIII decreed the destruction of the church, sacristy and chapter house in his 1530s feud with the Pope. He sold the land to rich local merchants. After centuries of neglect, these remnants, along with the foundations of the church, were restored in 1973. The city planners, always trying ways to create new inner-city dwellings, created this terrace complex in 1981. Its gates, doorways and windows reflect the pointed arch motif from medieval Gothic. Twisted chimneys suggest Tudor design. This cheap imitation of an historical style is a betrayal of not only the past, but also of modern architecture. By the late 1960s, housing in the eastern suburb of Byker was inadequate. 12,000 people lived in a gridiron pattern of Tyneside flats. Shared yards, outside toilets, coal sheds and back alleys were typical. These regimented rows were thrown up in the white heat of 19th century industry to home the leagues of workers needed for the nearby engineering factories and shipyards. It was Newcastle Council's 1965 policy to demolish people out of poverty, championed by Wilfrid Burns, that led to the slum clearances. The Byker Wall went up in the early 1970s after consultation with members of the close-knit Byker community. Architect Ralph Erskine, known for designing Welwyn Garden City under Louis de Soissons, rejected the brutalism of public housing schemes of the day. By taking people's concerns into account, he also rejected the prevailing paternalism of local authorities. Careful landscaping separates cars and people. Open spaces allow pleasant views as well as safe play areas. Most can agree Byker is attractive. Everyone can agree that it is imaginative. Here, colour, variety, detail and a regard for human scale, values and needs combine to make it an example of municipal housing at its best. It transcends the eternal reality of budgets never quite matching aspiration. The birds have been accommodated at every turn. The trees give life to space. The vistas across the city invigorate. The slope allows garage roofs to become gardens. Today, the estate covers 81 hectares, housing 9,500 people in 1,800 homes. Far less dense than before, but with a wider demographic spread. The community has changed, not because of something nasty in the scheme itself, but following economic shifts damaging working communities everywhere. Shipbuilding, once the largest employer here, closed down in the 1980s. Unemployment reached 30%. The right to buy policy further diminished the social housing stock. Byker residents have suffered antisocial problems. Everyone remembers Rat Boy hiding from police in heating ducts, but the optimism remains. The estate is now managed by Byker Community Trust, with 4 tenants but only 2 council representatives on its 13-strong board. A £26 million spending spree is underway, providing new roofs, doors and windows. There is much to celebrate in Byker and the vision that inspired it. Its daring design, its continuing community involvement shine on. Newcastle Quayside, site of the strategic river crossing, has changed use several times over the last 250 years. Coal and freight ships no longer tie up here. Naval vessels are a rarity. Mighty time-built warships bound for foreign lands have gone forever. Even the floating nightclub, albeit on the Gateshead side, has sailed away for scrap. Today, gentrification abounds. Visitors flock to see the latest £1 million yacht at the marina. Evening revellers take the beverages on offer. Most of these buildings were erected after the Great Fire in 1854. They are singular, sharing a general style but retaining individuality. Each new addition would have come as a shock in its day, but we now accept them as a whole. Recent insertions like this at 3 Indian Kings House can be criticised. They don't follow the fashions of the past. Victorian and Edwardian architecture seems harmonious to us, but the language of the modern strikes a wrong note. This building makes some concessions to its surroundings in scale and shape, whilst harking back to ancient Egyptian forms in the proportions of its main doorway and soaring, spiky window bays. It should soon be regarded as an equal partner, contributing its share to the patchwork of the street made up over the last 200 years. The Custom House, built in 1766, was later remodelled in 1833. Today, there is no need for a close watch on imports and exports. The building is occupied by barristers serving the busy 1993 law courts nearby. Next door is the replacement for a dismal shed, latterly used as a weekly flea market hall. This sturdy yet characterless egg box will soon become populated by more of the new businesses chasing one of the oldest. Theft, extortion and murder are not in short supply. This goose will have laid its golden egg for the speculators. Further along is an earlier attempt at the same utilitarian style. It seems that brutalism never went out of fashion. Baltic Chambers is a clever amalgam of old and new. The original building had suffered partial demolition in the early 20th century. In 1991, architects replaced the missing section, giving some quirky Mediterranean balconies and an oriel corner. It is a solid construction, true to the original concept, but using today's methods and materials. Restored buildings raise many questions. It was André Marois who said, "Style cannot breathe in a void. Art is different from life, but cannot exist without it. Pale copies of the past, colourless distillations of old messages do not echo any meaning. Only strong, assured solutions reflect the three dimensions: the past, the present, and the future."